Today I wanted to talk about color photography, the era, and what I think the problem with Fujifilm is, and the look of photography in general right now. And I'm a Fujifilm shooter, so take that with a grain of salt. So my favorite photographer, one of them anyways, is Mr. Fred Herzog, German-born from Vancouver, Canada. Well, he was born in Germany, moved to Vancouver. If you haven't seen this book before, it is amazing. Modern Color. It's one of my favorite photography books. Anyways, the thing that I find super interesting about Fred Herzog, other than his use of color and how amazing his photographs are, is that, kind of like Vivian Mayer, he was not known, not famous for most of his life. I mean, he had a great job. He worked in photography on the different side of things as a medical photographer and UBC head of photography. But the important thing was that he shot, 100,000 rolls of Kodachrome, but it was never seen because back then printing Kodachrome was a challenge. It was on slide film. It had to be projected. And it wasn't until scanning technologies came along much later that you could print Fred's work, and then the world got to see it. And to be from Vancouver and show Vancouver over the years and the change, and it's, there's such a nostalgic, of course it's Kodachrome, and the colors that people, that you can get off Kodachrome are amazing. But it encapsulated a time, and I think that sense of nostalgia through color, and a really changing and progressive city like Vancouver that's had such a facelift over the years, from the images we see from Fred Herzog back in the 50s and 60s to the the city of glass that it is now. It's very different, and that's what I think the beauty of his, other than being an amazing photographer, just the color and the look, it sets a place and a time. And I think that's super important. What I worry about today, and how I tie this back to Fujifilm and just editing and presets in general, is that we're not capturing our time right now. And film has had a resurgence, and now we have all these digital filters and editing styles to replicate the look of film. But I think we're doing our era and our generation a disservice by doing this, because when we look back, when I look back at pictures of the 80s and 90s, 2000s, it has a feeling to me because that's what the film looked like. That's how it was recorded. But now it's like, what's our generation going to look like in 20 years? It'll look like the 60s. It'll look like the 50s. We're trying to replicate this Kodachrome and all these old film stocks that, yeah, they're beautiful, and I love them, and I fall prey to them because it pulls on our sense of nostalgia as photographers that you're creating this work like this. But I think it is a disservice to our generation now and our era, what it looks like now. It doesn't look like the 60s. It doesn't look like the 70s or the 80s or whatever film stock you're trying to emulate with your digital camera. And I do this a lot. I mean, I shoot film. I have a fridge full of film and medium format and TLRs, and I love shooting film. I love rolling my own film. I love processing it. I have a dark room at home, so I love it and I get it, and I try to look for that in my, not so much the look in my digital photography, but just the feeling of shooting it and the whole process. But I don't think that's a very good thing long term, the way that we're trying to emulate a completely different decade for the decade that we have now. And I think we have a duty to try to document what today looks like. And I don't think a lot of people, I haven't heard a lot of discussions about that on online. So, if anybody has a thought on that, I'd like to hear it. What do you think? Do you think that we should be documenting our era more true to life, or is it okay to have those emulations? I mean, of course, I think it's okay. I think any way you want to express yourself visually is of course more than okay. There's no rules, but yeah, just something that was kind of kicking around in my head. But if you do get a chance, if you're not familiar with Fred Herzog's Modern Color, again, it's just unbelievable. I'd like to do a longer look or deep dive into Fred Herzog and some of the other early color photographers that I just love. I've got some great books we can go through, and maybe we'll look at that down the road. So, yeah, just give it some thought. What look are we trying to get, and are we doing our era justice in 2020s? What do we look like? I guess, we may not appreciate it until we're 10 years in the future of what this time looked like, but I'm certainly going to try to be more cognizant of that in my shooting and my editing style. So until next time, we'll check in with another photographer and other random photography ideas.